Welcome back to English Through Stories. I'm Elio.
And I'm Maya. And today, I just want to say this up front. Today's story is one that I think almost every English learner who has moved to a new country will hear and immediately think, yes, that was me, or that could have been me on a different day with different words.
It really is one of those stories.
Because today we're talking about first days, specifically the first day in a new country. And we all know that first days are already hard. You're tired from traveling, you don't know where anything is, every small thing takes 3 times as long as it should, and you're trying to hold yourself together and make a good impression all at the same time.
And you're doing all of that in a second language.
In a second language, which adds an entirely different layer of, I don't even know what to call it, pressure? Vulnerability?
Both. Definitely both.
So today's story is about a woman named Lila. And Lila arrived in Toronto with good English, a good attitude, and the very specific, very genuine desire to be polite, to make people feel comfortable, to be the kind of person that people liked immediately.
And what happened instead?
Is that she came across as the opposite, and she didn't know why. And that not knowing, that is the part that stayed with me long after I heard this story.
Are you ready?
I've been ready since you told me the premise. Let's go.
Her name was Lila Mansour, 23 years old, originally from Alexandria, Egypt, and on the second Tuesday of September, she landed at Toronto Pearson International Airport with 2 large suitcases, a backpack that was slightly too heavy, and a folder of printed documents that she had organized by category using color-coded tabs. There was a tab for her college acceptance letter, a tab for her accommodation confirmation, a tab for her health insurance, a tab for her study permit, a tab labeled simply Important, Read First, which contained, among other things, a printed list of emergency phone numbers, a map of the TTC subway system, and a handwritten note from her mother that said in Arabic, "You are ready for this." Also, eat breakfast every day. Lila was, in most observable ways, a prepared person. She had studied English since she was 8 years old. Her grammar was careful and deliberate, the kind of grammar that comes from years of classroom instruction, from textbooks and exercises and teachers who circled errors in red pen. She had passed her language test with a score that made her English teacher in Alexandria say with visible pride, "This girl is ready." But there is a difference, and this is something Lila was about to discover in a very direct way, between English that is tested and English that is lived, between the English of reading passages and multiple choice questions and the English of a Tuesday morning in a new city where everything is moving and nothing is pausing to wait for you. She took the airport express train to Union Station, which she managed without asking for help, which felt like a small but significant victory. She found the connecting subway line. She got off at the right stop. She walked 6 minutes to the student residence where she would be living for the next 8 months, rolling her suitcases over uneven pavement, past coffee shops she had never seen, and sandwich boards advertising lunch specials she didn't yet understand. She checked in at the front desk. She found her room on the 4th floor. It was smaller than she had imagined. Most things, she was discovering, were slightly different from how she had imagined, but it was clean and quiet, and the window faced east, which meant morning light, which she decided to take as a good sign. She unpacked the essentials, her laptop, her chargers, the photograph of her family she had been told to pack somewhere accessible, not buried deep in a suitcase where you'd have to search for it when you needed it most. She placed the photograph on the small desk beside the window. She plugged in her phone to charge. She changed out of her travel clothes. And then she picked up the printed schedule she had received by email the week before, the orientation schedule for new international students at Ridgefield College. 3 days of sessions, tours, information meetings, and what the schedule described as community building activities, a phrase that Lila had read several times and understood individually, but couldn't quite picture in practice. Today was day 1. The first session began at 2 o'clock. It was currently 12:45. Lila ate a small lunch, a sandwich she had bought at the airport and carried carefully in her backpack, and then she brushed her hair and put on a sweater that was slightly nicer than the one she had been traveling in, and at 1:53 she walked into the orientation room on the ground floor of the student center. The room was large and bright, with round tables arranged in clusters across the floor and a small raised area at the front where two people were adjusting a projector screen. There were perhaps 40 students already seated, a mix of faces and languages, and the particular specific silence of a room full of people who don't yet know each other and are all performing the same act of pretending to look at their phones while actually watching the door. At the front of the room, coordinating everything with efficient cheerfulness, was a young woman in a green college-branded hoodie who introduced herself to arriving students with a handshake and a name tag. Her name was Emma. She had the kind of wide-open smile that is difficult to distrust, and she was working the room with the practiced ease of someone who has done orientation, the orientation for the orientation volunteers, many times. She spotted Lila coming through the door and moved towards her immediately. "Hi, welcome. Are you here for the new student orientation?" "Yes, I am Lila." "So great to meet you, Lila. I'm Emma. Here's your name tag. Just peel the back off. Are you coming from far away today? Like, do you have a long commute?" Lila understood the question, but was slightly caught by the word commute, which she had seen in writing but not often heard in conversation. She understood it meant getting here, the travel. "I am living in the residence, just 5 minutes walking." "Oh, perfect. That's so convenient. Okay, we're just getting started, so grab any seat that feels good to you. Can I get you anything? Tea, coffee, water?" "Water, please." "Coming right up. Oh, and just so you know, we have a group dinner tonight after the sessions. Nothing fancy, just a nearby Italian place. It's totally optional, but it's a really nice way to meet people. Just keep it in mind." "Thank you," Lila said. She meant it genuinely, and she hoped it came through. She chose a seat at a table near the middle, not hiding, not pushing herself to the very front, just visible and present. The orientation began at 2 o'clock, exactly. There were introductions, slides about the college's academic calendar, information about the library and the health center and the counseling services. Lila took notes even though most of the information was also in a printed booklet on the table, because writing things down was how she processed them, always had been. Between the first and second session, Emma circulated with a tray of small snacks, cookies and fruit and tiny bottles of juice, making conversation as she moved around the room. She reached Lila's table and set down the tray with a friendly smile. "How are you finding everything so far? A lot of information coming at you, I know." "It is a lot, yes, I agree. But helpful." "Good. So the snacks, we have chocolate chip cookies or fruit. Do you have a preference?" Now, Lila heard this question. She understood it. She had no strong feeling either way. She was not a person who felt strongly about the difference between a cookie and a piece of fruit when both were being offered for free at an orientation event. What she wanted to communicate, genuinely from a place of flexibility and politeness, was, "It is either. Fine. You choose. I am easy. I don't want to be difficult." In Arabic, there is a direct equivalent of this sentiment. It is one of the most common polite responses in conversation. You say it constantly, and it means, "It doesn't matter to me. Please, whatever is easier. I have no preference, and I don't want to impose." And Lila had learned the English for this. She had heard it, she had used it, and she felt confident in it. She smiled at Emma and said pleasantly, "I don't care." Something moved across Emma's face. It was fast, a slight shift, barely there, a small recalibration. Her smile didn't disappear, but it changed just a little, became slightly more careful. "Oh, okay. I'll just leave a few of each then." She set down a small plate and moved to the next table. Lila picked up a cookie. She looked at her notes. She did not notice what had just happened, or if she noticed something, she couldn't identify it. She filed it away vaguely as, "Emma seemed slightly different for a second." Then she let it go.
The afternoon sessions continued. There was a campus tour led by Emma and a second volunteer named Marcus, who had an enormous amount of enthusiasm for the history of a building that had been renovated in 2019 and did not seem, to Lila's eye, to have an enormous amount of history. She smiled at all the right moments and asked one question about the library's quiet study rooms that Marcus answered in such detail she regretted asking. By 5 o'clock, the official sessions were done. Students were drifting in small clusters, exchanging phone numbers, moving toward the exit in the tentative way of people who are not yet sure if they are friends, or just acquaintances who will become friends, or just 40 people who happen to be in the same room for 3 hours. Emma reappeared at the front of the room with a clipboard. Okay, everyone, quick reminder about tonight's dinner. We're going to Bella Roma on College Street. It's only about a 10-minute walk. We're leaving from here at 6:30. If you want to join, just let me know now so I can give the restaurant an accurate head count. She began moving through the room, clipboard in hand. When she reached Lila, she said, "Lila, did you want to come tonight? It's a really fun group." And again, Lila felt no strong preference. She was tired from travel. She was also aware that she should meet people, should not hide in her room on the first day, should take the opportunities that were being offered to her. So she was genuinely open. She had no objection. She wanted to say, "If it works, I will come. I have no strong opinion either way. I'll go along with whatever." "I don't care," she said, with a warm smile. This time, Emma's expression changed more visibly. It was still polite. Emma was professionally warm, genuinely kind, but something closed slightly in her eyes. She made a small mark on her clipboard and said, "Okay, I'll put you down as a maybe," in a tone that Lila could not quite read, and moved on. Lila stood for a moment with a feeling she had no precise name for. Not quite embarrassment, not quite confusion, something quieter than both. A sense that a small thing had gone wrong somewhere and she couldn't find it. She was still standing near the window when a woman appeared at her side. She was perhaps 25, with thick, dark hair and a scarf in a deep burgundy color, and she said in a low, friendly voice, "Hi, I'm Nadia. I arrived 2 days ago from Cairo." Lila felt something release in her chest. "Alexandria," she said. "I arrived today." "Today! Oh my God, today is the worst day," Nadia said with great feeling, which made Lila laugh, a real laugh, the first one since she'd landed. "Come sit for a second. My feet are dying from that tour." They found 2 chairs near the back. Nadia pulled out a small packet of biscuits from her bag. She was, she explained, still adjusting to Canadian portion sizes and carrying supplementary snacks everywhere as a precaution. And they talked for a few minutes in the easy way of 2 people who share a language and a history and the specific exhaustion of a rival bay. Then Nadia said, quietly, "Can I tell you something? It's about a phrase." Lila looked at her. "I heard you with Emma when she asked you about the snacks and then about the dinner." "Yes?" "You said, 'I don't care,' both times." "Yes, I meant, it doesn't matter to me. Either way is fine. I'm flexible." Nadia nodded slowly. "I know. I understood exactly what you meant. But here, in English, in Canada, 'I don't care' doesn't mean that. Or it can mean that, but the feeling of it is different, the way it lands." Lila was quiet. "It sounds a little cold," Nadia continued, choosing her words carefully. "A little like, 'I have no interest,' or even like, 'Why are you asking me this?' When Emma offered you the snacks and you said, 'I don't care,' she probably heard something like, 'I don't care about your snacks,' or 'I don't care about this activity.'" "I didn't mean that," Lila said, quietly. "I know you didn't. Of course you didn't. But that's the thing about this phrase. It translates directly from Arabic, right? We say it all the time. It's one of the most polite things you can say back home. It means I'm not going to impose, I'm flexible, whatever you decide is fine. But here, she paused, here the polite version is different. What is the polite version? Nadia smiled. I don't mind, or either is fine with me, or just I'm happy either way. Lila repeated the phrases to herself, quietly, once, then again. I don't mind, she said. Exactly, Nadia said. Same idea, completely different feeling. Lila looked toward the door where Emma was still working through her clipboard, still smiling at students, still writing marks next to names. She thought about the cookie. She thought about the clipboard. She thought about the small, unidentifiable shift she had noticed and filed away. Should I say something to Emma? Asked Lila. Only if you want to. You don't have to, but you could. She'll understand. Lila thought about it for a moment, then she stood up, straightened her sweater, and walked toward Emma. Emma looked up from her clipboard. Hey, Lila, everything okay? Yes, everything is fine. I just wanted to say, about the dinner, I would like to come if there is still space. I'm sorry, I realized that when you asked me before, I said, I don't care, and I think that came out wrong. I meant, I don't mind. Either way was fine for me, but I do want to come, if that's okay. Emma's whole face changed. The careful politeness opened up into something much warmer and more real. Of course there's space. I'm really glad you said that, honestly. Yes, come. It's going to be a great night. Thank you, Lila said. She walked back to Nadia, who was watching with what could only be described as quiet satisfaction. How was it? Fine, Lila said. She pulled out her notebook, the small green one she kept for things that mattered, and at the top of a fresh page she wrote 2 phrases. One in Arabic, which is the one she had grown up saying, the one that meant flexibility and openness and the desire to not impose, and next to it, in careful English letters, I don't mind. She looked at them both for a moment. Then she closed the notebook. Then she went to dinner with 40 new people, and she was fine. Music softens, holds for a beat, then fades gently. Maya, a beat of silence. I love Nadia. Eliel, Nadia is the person everyone needs on their first day. She is. She's the person who steps in at exactly the right moment and says the thing you need to hear in the way you need to hear it. Not loudly, not in front of everyone, just quietly, personally, kindly. And what Nadia explained to Lila is something that I think deserves a really thorough conversation today, because, okay, let me ask you first, Maya, before I explain anything. When you heard the mistake, Lila saying, I don't care, did you immediately understand what went wrong? Maya, I did, yeah, but only because I've heard this explained before. If I hadn't, if I was hearing it for the first time, I genuinely think I would have missed it, because I don't care makes complete grammatical sense. It's not wrong English, it's not broken, it's just, it carries the wrong weight. Eliel, that phrase, the wrong weight, that is exactly what this is about, and I want to spend real time on this because it's one of the most important things for intermediate English learners to understand. The mistake Lila made is not a grammar mistake. Let me say that very clearly. Her grammar was fine. Her sentence was perfectly constructed. The problem lives somewhere else entirely.
In the feeling of the phrase.
In the feeling, in what native English speakers hear when they hear that sentence, which is very different from what Layla was trying to say.
Okay, so let's break this down properly. In Arabic, and I know this is true in a lot of other languages too, there are expressions that directly translate to I don't care, but they're used as a polite, flexible, easygoing response. Like, don't worry about me. Either option is fine. I'm not going to make this difficult. Is that right?
Exactly right. And you hear the same pattern in Spanish, in Portuguese, and French, in many languages. There's an equivalent phrase that means, essentially, I have no strong preference. You choose. I'm flexible. And it's one of the warmest, most cooperative things you can say. It communicates, I trust you. I'm not going to be demanding. I'm easy to be with.
So Layla was being generous. She was trying to make Emma's job easier by removing herself as a variable. Like, I don't need special treatment, just do whatever works.
Completely. She was doing what a polite, considerate person does. But in North American English, and particularly in Canadian English, which tends to be quite warm and explicitly friendly, I don't care has a very specific emotional register, and it's not the one Layla intended.
So, what does it actually communicate when a Canadian hears I don't care?
It depends slightly on the context, but in the situation Layla was in, being welcomed, being asked a simple, friendly question, I don't care lands somewhere between indifference and mild dismissal. It can sound like, this doesn't interest me, or I have no investment in this, or, and this is the version Emma probably landed on, it can sound slightly like being shut down, like the conversation isn't worth engaging with.
Which is so far from what Layla meant that it's almost funny. Almost. If it wasn't also genuinely painful.
And here's the thing that makes it particularly tricky. The phrase sounds complete. It sounds confident. It doesn't sound like a mistake. When someone says, I don't care, clearly and directly, with a smile, there's no obvious signal that something has gone wrong. It doesn't have the quality of a broken sentence where a listener can hear the gap and thinks, oh, she was going for something else. It sounds finished. It sounds like exactly what the person meant to say.
Which is why Emma couldn't gently correct it, because there was nothing obviously wrong to correct.
Right. She just received it and adjusted her understanding of Layla based on it, which is what we all do when communication happens. We take the words at face value and we form an impression. And poor Layla's first impression, through no fault of her own, was, this person seems a little closed off, a little uninterested, which was the complete opposite of who she actually was.
Okay, so what should she have said instead? Because Nadia gave her 2 or 3 options in the story, but I want us to really go through them properly.
Yes, let's do this carefully. So the core phrase, the most important one for listeners to absorb today, is I don't mind. I don't mind. And this phrase is doing the same job that I don't care was trying to do. It means I have no strong preference. Either option is fine. I'm flexible and easygoing, but the feeling is completely different. I don't mind is warm. It's open. In Canadian English, it reads as generous and cooperative.
Can you use it in a sentence the way Layla would have used it?
Sure. So Emma asks, do you want a cookie or some fruit? And Layla says, I don't mind. Whatever you have more of is fine. That answer communicates everything she wanted to communicate. It says, I'm flexible. Please don't fuss over me. I'm happy with whatever. And Emma hears, this person is easy and warm. Exactly the impression Layla wanted to make.
And for the dinner question, when Emma asked if she was coming, and Layla wanted to say she was open either way.
She could say, I don't mind. I'm happy to come if there's space. Or even more directly, I'd actually love to come if there's room. Both signal the same genuine openness, but they also signal warmth. They tell Emma, I'm interested, I'm engaged, I want to participate.
Right. And that last one, I'd actually love to come if there's room, is actually stronger, isn't it? Because it's not just neutral, it's slightly positive.
Exactly. And there's an important lesson inside that. In English, particularly in social and professional situations in Canada and the US, leaning slightly toward warmth and enthusiasm is almost always read better than neutral. Not fake enthusiasm, not over-the-top positivity, just a small lean toward engagement. I'd love to versus I don't mind. Both are true for Layla. Both are accurate to what she was feeling. But one of them opens a door, and the other one leaves the door at a slightly uncertain angle.
Okay, I want to ask about something else because I think there's a broader pattern here that's worth naming. Because this isn't just about one phrase, it's about a whole category of mistake, isn't it? Where the learner has translated kind of directly from their first language into English. And the translation is technically correct, word for word, but the emotional meaning doesn't transfer.
Yes, and this is something linguists actually have a name for. It's called pragmatic transfer, which is a technical term, but the idea is quite simple. It means when you learn a new language, you don't just bring grammar and vocabulary from your first language. You also bring social habits, communication habits, the invisible rules about how to be polite, how to be warm, how to be cooperative. And sometimes those invisible rules translate across languages perfectly, and sometimes they don't.
And you don't know which ones transfer until you're already in the situation.
That's the difficult part. You don't know until you're in the room, or until you've sent the email, or until you notice that slight shift in someone's expression that Layla kept noticing and couldn't explain.
Which is such a specific feeling, by the way. I've had that feeling. You say something and you watch something change slightly in the other person's face, and you think, something just went wrong, but I don't know what it was, and you can't fix it because you don't know what to fix.
And that uncertainty, that hovering in the unknown, is actually one of the harder emotional parts of operating in a second language in a new culture. Not the big dramatic mistakes, the small, invisible ones.
Which is exactly why Nadia is so important in the story. She named it. She gave it language. And once Layla had the information, she could do something about it immediately.
And here's what Layla did with that information. She didn't spiral. She didn't catastrophize. She didn't spend the rest of orientation replaying the cookie conversation and telling herself she had ruined everything. She took the information, she went directly to Emma, she self-corrected, calmly, clearly, with a direct and honest little explanation.
I think that came out wrong. That line is so good.
It's a beautiful line, and it's worth teaching as a phrase on its own. I think that came out wrong, or that didn't come out the way I meant it. These are incredibly useful phrases for any English learner in any situation where you said something and you can feel it didn't land correctly, even if you don't know exactly why.
Because it opens the door for a do-over without making a big dramatic thing of it.
Exactly. It's low-key, it's honest. It doesn't over-explain or over-apologize. It just signals to the other person, the thing you just heard wasn't quite what I meant. Here is what I actually meant. And most people, most warm, reasonable people like Emma, will respond with complete understanding and move straight past it.
And Emma did. She went from clipboard politeness to genuine warmth in about 10 seconds.
Which is also a lesson about something that I think is easy to forget when you're in the middle of a language panic. Most people are not waiting for you to fail. Most people, when they realize there's been a small miscommunication, are genuinely happy to receive the correction and move on. The awkwardness usually lives longer in the learner's head than it does in the other person's.
The 3 a.m. replay problem.
The 3 a.m. replay problem. You replay it for weeks. The other person forgot it by dinner.
Which is both comforting and slightly unfair.
Slightly, but mostly comforting.
Okay, let's bring this together. Let's give listeners the clear summary, because I want everyone who is starting a new job, arriving in a new country, stepping into a new English-speaking environment to have something concrete they can carry with them.
All right, so 3 things. First, and this is the phrase level takeaway, replace I don't care with I don't mind whenever you want to say either is fine. I have no strong preference. Same idea, completely different feeling. I don't mind is warm, it's open. In Canadian English, it reads as generous and cooperative. Practice saying it this week. Say it in the mirror if you need to. Say it until it feels as natural as the phrase you've been using in your first language.
Second, and this is the awareness level takeaway, before you use a phrase that you've directly translated from your first language, pause for 1 second and ask yourself, where have I heard this phrase used in English? Was it in a textbook, a TV show, a real conversation? With what kind of people? In what kind of moment?
If you've only ever seen it in writing or heard it in a very casual context, be a little careful before using it in a professional or first impression situation. The phrase may be correct, but correct and appropriate are two different things.
Third, and this is the resilience level takeaway, if something lands wrong, use Lila's line. I think that came out wrong. What I meant was, and then say what you actually meant. It's simple, it's honest, it works, and it will almost always be received better than silence.
I'm going to add a fourth one.
Go ahead.
Find Nadia. If you are arriving somewhere new, a new country, a new job, a new school, find the person who has been there a little longer than you, who comes from a background similar to yours, who can give you the quiet, kind, private explanation when you need it. Because there is no textbook that teaches everything. There is no course that covers every phrase, every cultural register, every invisible social rule. Sometimes the most important education happens in a quiet corner of an orientation room over a packet of biscuits.
That's exactly right.
Okay, we want to hear from you.
Yes, here is your question for this week, and as always, it's one we genuinely think about. Have you ever used the phrase in English that you translated directly from your first language and discovered, maybe right away or maybe later, that it came out with the wrong feeling? What was the phrase? What did you mean? What did people hear?
Because I am absolutely certain that "I don't care" is not the only phrase that has this problem. There are equivalents in every language. And if you've found one, we want to know. And so does every other listener here.
And if you're listening to this on your first day somewhere new, welcome. Seriously, you are doing something genuinely hard. The grammar, the vocabulary, the culture, the invisible rules, all of it, all at once. Give yourself the grace that you would give to a friend in the same situation.
And if you make a mistake, and you will, and that's completely fine, remember Lila. She opened her green notebook, she wrote down what she learned, and then she went to dinner.
And she was fine.
She was more than fine.
See you in the next story.
See you in the next story.